Welcome back to Face the State on this Sunday morning. Now the race for the 5th Congressional District. We've met 3 of the candidates so far here on Face the State. Manny Santos, Johanna Hayes, and Mary Glassman. Today we have 2 more for you to meet, and we're going to begin right now with one of them, Ruby Corby-O'Neill. She is a former professor, and she's hoping to become the first Latina elected to represent Connecticut in Congress. And Mrs. O'Neill, good to see you here on the program.
Thank you so much for having me. This is an honor.
A little bit about your background, because you emigrated here as a child,
yes.
correct?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
I was almost 2 years old, and my family sailed into the harbor in Baltimore on Thanksgiving Day. And then we traveled to the Bronx in New York, and we lived with my grandmother. And that's how I grew up, in the Bronx. And then we moved to Queens, New York.
Obviously, immigration is a big issue. Did you come here legally, or how did you come here?
Oh, yes. We came here legally, and I became a citizen when I was 9 years old. And what's interesting is that back then, they took your birth certificate, and they gave me naturalization papers. So the rest of my life, whenever I had to go through a program at Parks and Rec or anything for school, they'd ask for my birth certificate, and they wouldn't understand these naturalization papers. So in my 20s and 30s, I tried calling Immigration and Naturalization Services to get my birth certificate, and long story short, I'm still on hold. So I don't have.
So if you were to go to Washington, what would you do? What kind of work would you do to change the immigration laws that exist today? Because people say the system is broken.
Yeah, it is broken. And we have a crippling conversation. Well, I think we should change the law, because this situation that we have with the children at the border, you know, this has been happening a long time in the making. And we have to change the law and focus on keeping the children together with their families. I think that's important. I mean, it's heartbreaking to see these photographs and these images of these children separated from their families. And unfortunately, that's the law because of the Flores consent decree. And, you know, we can't just cherry pick and choose the laws that we want to enforce or that we don't want to enforce. So it's important that Congress does their job and change it.
Should there be a path to legalization for people who come here illegally? And I know that one in the 5th District, Donata Rondo, she's from Cheshire. She came here as a teenager from Albania. She came here illegally, and she was recently given a deportation order. There was a stay issued, so she's still here, but that case is going to come up again.
Right.
What should her path be? What should happen to her?
Well, I think that's another clear example of a broken immigration system. And it's good to see that there is a process for people to go through asylum. There is a legitimate process, and I'm glad that the process is working and that she is going through that. But that's something that needs to be changed. That's another reason why we should have a doubling or a tripling of the judges who are hearing these cases. I like what Senator Cruz has proposed to have. He wants to double them and have those cases adjudicated in 14 days. I think we should triple it. And let's make these decisions. We have like over 600,000 people now who are seeking asylum, and we have to determine, are those legitimate asylum seekers?
As you know, we have no Republicans representing Connecticut in Congress right now. It's a Democratic delegation. What's your argument when you knock on someone's door and say, hey, I'm a Republican, and here's how I will represent you differently? How will you be different than what we have right now?
Well, I will work with Congress to make sure that these laws do get changed, because what I'm seeing now is the Democrats have failed us. We have this all-Democrat, imbalanced Connecticut congressional delegation, and they haven't been doing anything. And this immigration problem has been in the making for a very long time. Now, the Democrats had control over the House and the Senate during the Obama administration, and they didn't do anything. And now they're crying with this fake outrage about the children, and they're just doing it for the purpose of winning elections. And I think that every American should be angry about how these children are being used as political pawns. And I just want to say, in terms of working in Congress, I saw a stark and startling, egregious display of outcome determination bias by Congressman Jim Himes on our Connecticut delegation. The day before Speaker Ryan was going to introduce that immigration bill on the floor of the House, and before any debates on the floor of the House were heard, the day before, Jim Himes said, I'm not going to vote for that, and neither are several other Democrats. Now, that's prejudging. How can we trust a system that works that way?
In terms of bringing money back to Connecticut, we don't get as much as we give out, and the rankings that come out always show Connecticut near the bottom. How will you be different than Elizabeth Esty?
We have to cut spending. You see,
What
specifically? I don't think we're going to have to look at programs that are duplicated. One of the things I want to do is do regulation reform and get rid of outdated regulations that are strangling small and mid-sized businesses. They're having a very difficult time negotiating this expensive regulatory maze. The big companies are having a hard time. But I don't think the answer is to say, I'm going to go down to Washington, D.C. and put my hand in the cookie jar, because everyone is putting their hand in the cookie jar, and you end up with $1 trillion debt.
Is President Trump good for Connecticut? Let me ask you that.
I think his policies have helped Connecticut.
Which way?
Well, we have a lower unemployment rate for minorities and for women. He's trying to secure the border. He is trying to be a champion for free trade. He is doing some good things. I have come across people, young people in their 20s who have had their first jobs after college to say, I got an increase in my paycheck and I didn't ask for it. I know people who are telling me their 401ks are thanking them. And that's because of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act.
Ruby Corby-O'Neill. She is a Republican running for Congress. Best of luck, and
well, thank you.
Perhaps see you again in the program.
I hope you do. Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Thank you very much.
When we come back, we'll meet one of the other Republicans running for CT5, and we'll have our flashback, some great old video from 45 years ago. What was in the news 45 years ago in Connecticut this week? We will show you. And we welcome your comments. You can find me on social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.